Hey, everybody, and welcome to our spring mentorship mini-series, Getting Started with Supplement Protocol Design. And I am Dr. Dan Kalish, and for those of you that are brand new, I'll go over my history a little bit, what I'm all about, why I do this, and then we'll get into a new topic, which I don't think, ever done any publicly wide lecturing on, which is like the most important thing, is how to design supplement programs and all the ins and outs of that. We've had an overwhelmingly enthusiastic response to signups for this, so I guess it was a good idea. Hopefully, you guys can give us some feedback too um, on if you got something out of this talk. So, I've been in practice for 30 years. I've been designing supplement programs for 30 years, and I've been through many phases, and I have observed currently what the common practices are of practitioners designing supplement programs. And I just wanted to convey the information of the past generations that trained me and all the experience that I've had in so you guys can improve your skills in designing supplement protocols. And so in terms of my background, I started several integrative health clinics. I've been in practice, as I said, for 30 years, running big clinics, little clinics. I've devoted the last 20 years or so to teaching practitioners useful skills so they can have a successful functional medicine practice. That's really sort of my life focus and life goal for quite some time now. We have built hundreds of functional medicine practices. I talk to hundreds of doctors every year and hear about their problems and concerns and, you know, their efforts to make this work. And I'm just trying to be a beacon of light here to let you all know that this is something you can do if you want to build a functional medicine practice or improve your existing practice. This is all, kind of tried and true proven stuff that we can do here. And that hopefully I can guide you through this journey just a little bit. And I've worked with the Mayo Clinic. We did a research study. The Mayo Clinic Integrative Medicine Department in Rochester actually took my mentorship class. 5 of them did. One of them took the class twice, which I took as a compliment. And we did a research study together. I've worked more recently in the last decade or so with Richard Lord, who's the scientist that developed much of the testing that we do. He did all the first organic acids work, amino acids, fatty acids, nutrient evaluations. That was all Richard Lord. He developed the first microbiome test for the industry. And so I've been really privileged to have these great teachers and try to pass that information on to you guys. And in terms of the courses that we teach, we're really trying to focus on getting practices up and running, because I've always felt for 20 years that there's not enough functional medicine doctors that are successful, and that I just want to make sure that you guys can make the income that you need, can help the patients in the way that you want, not burn yourselves out, and make this whole thing come together. So our flagship product is the mentorship class, and we're starting one right now this month. If you guys are interested, you can contact our office and set up a phone call with myself or one of my staff, and we can talk you through what this class is really about. But the net result of this class is that people at the end of the year are experts at lab interpretation. And I would put our one-year graduates up against anybody in the field one-on-one. Put an organic acids lab in front of them and say, okay, let's see who's better at this. We graduate really, really, really advanced practitioners after that year. It's an intense program, and you just learn a lot. Learn all the tricks of the trade and all the ins and outs of how to interpret labs, organic acids, all the GI testing, adrenal hormones, female hormones, just putting that whole package together with a business model and a clinical model and all the patient information that you need. That's really what the mentorship is about. And it's exciting. It's a really great group of doctors. It's a small group. It's sort of a special group. As a result of constantly looking at the main things that drag practices down, which is high overhead, by the way, and wanting to have you guys not make the mistake of spending too much money that you then have to earn back. It's one thing to get in new patients and do all the marketing. It's another thing to just spend all that money. And I've been there where I've had practices where we were bringing in $1 million and spending 900,000, and I was walking away with 20 or 30 bucks an hour, And so you can have $1 million practice and not make a lot of money. So one of the biggest innovations in the last 5-10 years in terms of you guys saving money is Rupa Health. And they have now consolidated and organized the whole process of ordering labs. And so it's probably the single largest money saver that I've ever implemented in my clinic. And it's a better patient experience anyways. They do a way better job than you could ever do of distributing labs. So if you guys have not set up a Rupa account yet, use this discount code. We'll email you the discount code. So just check your email box like tomorrow, and you get $100 off your first order if you come through the Kalish Institute recommendation. Okay, and it'll get you started. Order a lab on your test on yourself, and get things started there. If you haven't ordered an adrenal stress test on yourself in the last couple of years, just get one and see how stressed out you are. If you want to do a little more deep dive into things, order yourself an organic acids. Okay, so when I think about what makes practices work, which is our goal here, right, Kalish Institute, it's being able to interpret the labs. And let's say that you're kind of getting familiar with that. Then you've also got to figure out how to design supplement programs, not that are based on the lab. Yeah, they're based on the lab, but supplement protocols that people can actually do. And that's where people get tripped up. And so that's what I want to talk about today. There's a whole bunch of steps. You have to learn about each one of these products. You need to have well-developed clinical nutrition skills. If you don't, you take more of our classes and we'll teach you all that stuff. You also need lab interpretation skills. That's the hardest part for most people. Where are you going to learn that stuff? There's nowhere to go learn that stuff. Well, it's here. You can come to my classes, but there's not a lot of other places that are just devoted to lab interpretation. And then there's the the planning of all this, which is the program sequencing and layering. How are you going to overlap certain programs? How long are the programs going to last? What sequence do you do them in? And you can do the exact right set of programs with the exact right products in the wrong order, and it won't work. I know that sounds a little strange, but I don't know what we could think of another example of that in the real world. Yeah, I could think of an example of that. Like, let's say that you wanted to make scrambled eggs, for example, and that was just the thing that you wanted to do that day. And you scrambled the eggs and you put them in the pan, but you didn't turn the heat on. And you're thinking, oh, I'm going to turn the heat on, turn the gas on later. Are the eggs going to cook? No, he just did it out of sequence. It's never going to work. And it's like that with these kinds of programs. If you don't sequence things properly, it's not only not going to work, you can make the person worse. And then you're going to think that the program didn't work because you did everything in the wrong order. And everybody just screws that one up all the time because you have to have some old person who's been doing this for 30 or 40 or 50 years that's made all those sequencing mistakes that just tells you, oh, no. You got Giardia and H. pylori in front of you? Yeah, you better do the H. pylori first. I remember when Timmons first taught me that. I'm like, really? Why? He's like, just listen to me, kid. He used to call me Danny Boy. Just listen to me, Danny Boy. Do the H. pylori. Okay, I'm going to do the H. pylori first. Of course, he told me later on why, but you got to know that stuff. If I'd done the Giardia first, wouldn't have worked. H. pylori first, worked. So sequencing. There are also, in my mind, you should narrow your apothecary down to 45 supplements. When I first started my first practice in San Diego, California with Dr. Glenn, who's hands down one of the best naturopaths I've ever met, even to this day, we had an apothecary. I'm not making this up. There was a whole room in the clinic. It was the size of like a health food store. I counted one day and we had like over 20 different kinds of vitamin C, powder, pills, buffered, unbuffered, this brand, that brand, time release, not, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of products. And so the more circumspect you are, the more contained you are, the more you focus on a really core set of things that you need to use, the better you're going to get at doing it. So if you have hundreds of products you use on a regular basis, it's not necessarily going to make you a better practitioner. So I like to try to get people to have 45 or let's say under 50 key supplements. and have a half a dozen or a dozen essential health programs. These are the things that you want to run on everybody. And then, of course, you're going to do extra special things for different patients here and there. We're not cookie cuttering this at all. We're just saying that there's a core set of systems that you better get working. Neuroendocrine, GI, and detox. Once those systems are working, you can go off and do your like neuropathic Lyme disease and mold treatment if you want. But if you don't have neuroendocrine, GI, and detox systems full guns working perfectly, then those advanced treatments are not going to be as effective. And so you need to know what those essential health programs are. That's part of the whole process here. So the product part of this requires learning the basics of clinical nutrition. And that's what Dr. Glenn taught me over the course of our, I don't know, 5-6 years together. There's a long learning curve for that. Can't kind of squeeze it into today's webinar, but that I would encourage you to continue to take clinical nutrition classes and get your skills up as much as you can in that regard. Program design skills we're going to talk about right now, and then programming, planning we're going to talk about right now as well. Where are you going to start? How are you going to layer programs? And just to give it like a simple example, if you start with this basic overall philosophy, neuroendocrine first, get the system working, give the person a few months, then do your GI protocols, whatever they may be. Once the GI is working better, it doesn't have to be perfect, but working better, then getting into detoxification programs, you'll be in really good shape. So it's neuroendocrine first for a few months, then GI, clear out the GI, whatever you need to do. Once the GI is better, but not perfect, you can get into detox. And so you sequencing, just doing that alone is enough to start to make a pretty big difference. So then on the product understanding, again, you really do have to read and study a lot about magnesium and B6 and understand how these things work in the body. And it's like taking a physiology class in general, okay? Important. The program design part is more about how you combine products so that you're addressing entire body systems. Hey, this came up yesterday in class. So we had a student that submitted a lab in the mentorship class, and the patient had high lipid peroxides. That means that their lipids were getting damaged. They had a massive mitochondrial problem, not so good. Their oxidative stress markers were super high. And so we're thinking, what's one product that you could use that would knock out all of those problems? Something that would protect the lipids, knock down the so it has to be fat soluble. That's what I'm trying to say there, right? So if you have lipid peroxides high, you have to use a fat soluble product. It's not going to work, right? Because you got to get the product to where the fats are. And if it's water soluble, it's not going to do anything for your lipid damage. So it need to be fat soluble, need to protect lipids. It needed to be a massive antioxidant. And what the heck, maybe something that is completely responsible for ATP production at the same time. And see if anyone can type in the answer on that one. Well, that's pretty close. Robert got really close. And I would take that as an accurate answer. He said glutathione, but the answer was CoQ10. So I'm like, hey, just give her CoQ10, 200 milligrams twice a day. That's going to knock out the lipid problem. It's fat soluble. Last time I checked, it's going to get in there and protect your lipids. It's going to crank up that electron transport thing, that's the electron transport chain as part of the mitochondria where the person was having problems. And it's going to lower the oxidative stress, all in one product. So when you're talking about program design, one of the things you can do is try to figure out single products that at therapeutic dosages will have multiple effects. And then you can also use combination products that are kind of pre-designed for you, where some scientists spent a couple months designing like the best thing for your mitochondria or the best thing for your yeast treatment. And those combination products are like heaven because you didn't have to sit down and develop that thing. Somebody sitting at some lab at one of the supplement companies did that for you, okay? And then once you've got that part down, then the planning part I think is really the hardest part. How long are you gonna do these programs for? Which one's going to come first? Can you overlap them? Like, can you do that can you do the H. pylori and the Giardia program at the same time? No, never do that. Have I tried that a lot? Yeah. Does it work? Yeah. Does it always work? No. Does it backfire a lot? Yeah. So don't try that one. So I would like ask Timmons, like, can I do the H. pylori and Giardia program at the same time? He'd be like, no. And then I would just go out and do it. And then it wouldn't work. I'd be like, oh, well, maybe he was right about that one, So now 3 body systems. neuroendocrine, GI, and detox. Neuroendocrine, GI, and detox. And why in this order? Well, because the neuroendocrine programs shouldn't cause any side effects. We're talking about adrenal support, mitochondrial support, general hormone support. Shouldn't have any side effects from that stuff unless something's really wrong with the patient. If they do have side effects from neuroendocrine support, then you've got a really tough case on your hands. And they make people feel better. They start to feel better. They start to get stronger. Because when you do GI treatments or you go after detoxification pathways, those are very taxing treatments. A beat up, stressed out, depleted catabolic body is not going to do that great if you push it really hard and jump right into some, GI killing, microbiome killing program, where you're not killing the microbiome, but you're killing Giardia or H. pylori or whatever. That could make somebody who's already sick even sicker. So you want to build up the body in the beginning so that when you hit with the more important programs like GI and detox, the person doesn't crash. And you could say that detoxification and getting rid of environmental toxins is the most important treatment. I would agree with that. And some people would say the GI treatments are the most important. I would agree with that too. But you don't have to do the most important thing first. In fact, in general, you shouldn't. And that's true for a lot of things in life. A lot of things in life, you don't do the most important thing first. If you're meeting a new person and you like them, you don't like ask them to marry you on the first date, right? You wait and you get to know the person. There's a stage, and maybe that's the most important part of your relationship, but there's a stage when that is right. And should you do detox before GI? People argue about that one back and forth, but I think the neuroendocrine as a warm up and then GI and then detox, I think that sequence works the best from what I can tell. You're the least likely to cause side effects and most likely to get a successful result if you follow that sequence. Now let's talk about, so this is an assignment for you guys. Go ahead, not right now, but like today or tomorrow later on, write out like your top 45 products. Like what are the 45 supplements that you think are the most important? And write them in the order in which they're the most important to your practice. So the first one is the most important. So if someone came in and said, come into your office and said, look, everything's got to go. You've got 45 products you can use the rest of your career. What's your choice there? Get to your core supplements. And then make sure that you have a 1 or 2 minute explanation for each one of those products. And if you're not at this stage yet, you got to stop and do this right now. If you have a couple hundred products, but you don't know exactly how they really work, it's not a great place to be in. So 45 products, a 1 or 2 minute explanation. So for you to explain like the purpose of, I don't know, vitamin B6, if you don't really know what it does and how it works, you might have to spend a few hours studying about B6 so you knock that one out. And then go on to magnesium, and then go on to CoQ10, and whatever your 45 are, so you can communicate to your patients about why you're using them. And along the road, when you're reading about CoQ10, you may realize, wait a minute, I didn't know CoQ10 was solely responsible for carrying electrons from the second part of the electron transport chain to the third part. I didn't know that. And they're like, oh, I guess I got to include that in every one of my mitochondrial programs. That makes sense now. So it'll help rewire your brain in a way so you see the multiple uses of given products. Now, study guide to mastery. Pick the 45 supplements and master them, right? So you can explain them. You know that you've mastered them when you can explain them in a minute or two to a patient. Then you want to move on to health program design based on some kind of model or system. I'm giving you a system that I've used for 30 years now. If you don't like it, that's fine. You can do a different system, but you need some kind of a system that you have so you're coherent in your explanation to patients. Are you going to rotely follow that system? No, not at all. But it's going to be something that's like the basis of what you do, so that when you have a philosophy, you have a stance on all this. And then, I mean, honestly, you never ever follow that system exactly right because everybody's different. You got to modify it, but at least you have a system to modify. You then need to learn to sequence and combine the programs and correlate them with the lab findings and then treat symptoms versus the underlying cause. So each program, I think this is one of the most important concepts in the whole class today. Each treatment needs to either address patient symptoms or the underlying cause. So when I was first getting trained by Glenn, he taught me how to use clinical nutrition to eliminate symptoms, skin problems, constipation, gallbladder problems. I mean, he's a really good naturopath. And I learned a lot, 3 or 4 years of treating symptoms, and such that when a new patient came in, I could usually get some symptomatic relief within a few weeks, sometimes within a few days, by prescribing symptom relieving supplement programs. And then I learned about functional medicine. I was like, oh, wait a minute, we're supposed to be treating the underlying cause. And so I seem like a nice person, but I kind of have like an underlying personality defect of arrogance a little bit. If you get to know me, you'll be like, this guy's a little arrogant. So I got a little arrogant at that moment in my life, and I was in my 30s, so give me a break. And I was like, no, like I'm the underlying cause treating doctor, dude. We don't treat symptoms no more. Like that's out. And so I actually did this for a few years. People would like be symptomatic, and then I could have just given them a friggin' enzyme, and they would have been better. And I didn't. I was like, no, I don't treat symptoms. I see you have Giardia. We're going to go for the underlying cause. And so I made that mistake for a long time of only treating underlying causes. And that's just ridiculous because that's not treating the person. That's like my own personality defect of thinking I'm some superior knowledge person. So you want to be able to treat symptoms aggressively in the beginning, get the person symptom free, as you're also addressing the underlying cause. That's the trick to this, balancing those two things out and not going to either extreme. You don't only want to treat symptoms because then people don't address the underlying cause. But if you only focus on the underlying cause, you're not addressing the person really. You're addressing like some model that's theoretical. So you should have, by the end of the month, every one of your patients feeling better. Then you're balancing this right. And then you should be getting to um, what your goals are in this whole thing, which is the underlying cause correction. Now, on the neuroendocrine side, in case you're wondering what I mean when I say that, I could define it for you here. Adrenals, neurotransmitters, mitochondria, sex hormones, and thyroid. That's neuroendocrine. Those are the kinds of treatments. On the GI side, oh my gosh, that's a long list. I don't have time to go through each one of these, but it's basically antimicrobials and anti-inflammatories, prebiotics and probiotics, that kind of stuff, and enzymes. So you need to kind of learn all these products to master neuroendocrine. You need to learn all these products to master GI. I'll just give you a second. If you have your cell phone, just take a picture of that one in case you don't want to memorize that. Click. Okay, got it. And then this one, click. This is the minimal stuff. This is like, of course, there's a lot more than this, but these you should know inside and out. Remember, each one of these products, you should have like a 1 or 2 minute explanation for your patient for. You should really know how they work and why they work. And then on the detox, that's the list there. So this is my minimalist list of things that I should know. In the Glenn years, did I learn about all the different 20 kinds of vitamin C and how he used them for cancer patients and all this kind of stuff? Yeah, I did. But is vitamin C on this list? It should be on the adrenal list. Yeah, there's vitamin C. It's on the list there. But it's not like 20 different kinds. It's like one kind. Okay, so that's my list. You should, if you don't like this list, make up your own. If you like this list, use it and modify it, so you have some basis of what you feel are really the most important things that you need to know inside and out and do over and over again. Okay, so now let's talk about labs for a moment. Now, individual lab markers or sometimes patterns of lab markers are going to turn into supplement recommendations. Then that supplement recommendation has to get turned into a program. So you're putting multiple supplements together. And then you have to take that program and put it into a health plan. And so, oh my gosh, so much to say about this one. But the entry level is just knowing, okay, homovanillinic acid high, or let's say low, means that the person is low in dopamine. I need to give them tyrosine. Okay, you got that. And then you get to the programmatic level and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to support their brain. What else does the brain need to make dopamine besides tyrosine? And then you go through that list. So now you have not just an individual nutrient, but now you have a program for the brain. And then you're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to give the person all the things they need to raise their dopamine, but now I got to turn that into a plan. How else can you raise dopamine? And what's my favorite way to raise dopamine? Does anybody know? Like, how could you raise dopamine instantly without using, now, we're not talking about cocaine, we're not talking about Adderall, we're not talking about anything that's, you're not even putting anything into your body that's bad. How could you raise dopamine like instantly? You could definitely do exercise, but you know what works even better and faster is just a cold plunge. Just jump into a bucket of ice water or a bathtub with ice water in it. Your dopamine will just go like, wow. It goes up, I forget now, something like 400% or something as soon as you get into ice water. So that's when you're getting to the plan part. So you got the tyrosine, you got the cofactors, maybe you got some Acuna in there if you want to be fancy, and then you're like, let's do a cold plunge, or let's have you do, a high intensity workout twice a week, or whatever it is you're going to do to get the plan together. And the plan implies that you're using lifestyle changes to make the supplement plan work. And I'll